An accident, the first thing is personal injury.
Right.
If there's no serious personal injury, what I try to do is get the road cleared as quickly as possible.
Because of what we're talking about.
I take a mental picture if I have to. If
Yeah.
I have a camera, of course, I'll take a picture, but I'm going to need to do a sketch at some point in time. But I got to get that road clear as quickly as possible. So if there's no serious personal injury, that's the first step.
Yep.
Then you're right, there's a lot of documentation. I mean, we've got to identify everybody in the vehicles. We have to identify witnesses at the scene.
Yeah.
We have to be able to log and record any contributing factors such as weather, traffic conditions, things like that. It all has to be taken down.
Right.
And I mean, there are times when we can't move those vehicles, and that's when, like Garrett said, we've got somebody directing traffic. And I'm sure if you've lived in this town long enough, you've been stuck in traffic at an accident.
Yes.
And we realize, I mean, I was in one today on the way back from training. It's frustrating, but in all honesty, when you're working an accident scene, that's what you're working, and you do your best to get people around you, around the accident scene, but it's not the primary concern.
Right.
If there's somebody injured, we have to be careful and document everything. And we also have what's called a fatal accident reconstruction team in town. In the event of serious bodily injury or fatality, we freeze the scene, basically close it off, and we call in. We have officers that have been specially trained to do accident investigations of that nature, because they're very, very involved.
Right.
I mean, in addition to any criminal charges, they can go on civilly for years.
Right.
So I mean, just think about being called back to testify 5 years after an accident happened if you didn't take good notes at the scene.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of documentation involved.
Wow. So that lends itself well to the discussion we're having about what makes Londonderry, challenging or different from a patrol perspective, because we have this huge transient population, and it's not a bad word as you typically would relate to transient, in that we just happen to have a location that's both wonderful for us who live here. We can get to places quickly and get to a lot of different places quickly, but we also attract people via our road system. Are there times when you have accidents in multiple areas of the town, and if so, how do the patrol officers handle that?
Like I said, a Tuesday, Wednesday nights, that's when they usually happen, and like John said earlier, some nights when you're just going from call to call to call, and it's tough, and you just you hope that you have enough staffing on, and sometimes you might be doing two things at once. If you have a no personal injury at this accident, it's a minor accident, you still need to document everything.
Right.
All right, Officer Perry can go assist somebody else with the more serious accident, and kind of wear two hats at this one. So it can be challenging, and I mean, there's been nights where you have two accidents and a domestic going on, and you never know.
Yeah. How about our relationship to the adjacent towns? I mean, we obviously we border multiple towns. I mean, you mentioned Pelham, Manchester, Derry. I mean, if something happens close to one of the other towns, do the forces interact at all? I mean, how does that work?
Well, we do have a formal mutual aid agreement in effect with all bordering towns that can be invoked by either town. A lot of us will monitor. Personally, I monitor. My radio has the ability to scan a lot of agencies. Actually, they all do, but I have mine set to monitor Derry. Derry Police Department, they do not have the benefit of a canine, so I listen for when they might need one. And when available, of course, my first responsibility is to the town of Londonderry, but when I can be spared, I offer my services to the town of Derry. But we all have mutual aid, and if necessary, the dispatchers, the watch commander authorizes the dispatcher to call a neighboring town to ask if they can have an officer assist, especially in the event of an accident. I mean, we could have, this is a big town. I mean, it's a lot of area. And if you don't have somebody available and there's an accident, 10 miles away on the other side of town, and somebody could be in need of first aid, and if it's on the Hudson line, sure, we're going to call Hudson, and Hudson's going to, if they can, they're going to send somebody over and administer first aid and secure the scene until we can get there. So that happens quite frequently.
What about, let's say something occurs in one of the adjacent towns, something that's not good, a burglary or somebody's fleeing. I mean, do you guys get called to look out for someone who might be traveling through the town like we're talking about?
Yeah, that happens pretty often. It could be anywhere in the state. Typically, we have the SPOT system, which is the state police online system, and every dispatch center in the state has one of those. And so if Wyndham was looking for somebody, they could just send a teletype message out, and they could give specific information, like look out Hudson, Londonderry area, or it gives specific information over there. And in dispatch we'll kind of filter through that and decide what needs to go out. If they're looking for somebody in Colebrook, there's no ties to Londonderry or anything
Right.
like that, chances are we're probably not going to hear about it. But if Derry had a bank robbery and they're looking for, they're probably going to call us on the phone
Yeah.
before they send us a
Right.
teletype. But in dispatch, we'll give that information out to us.
Okay. How about Route 93? I know that the fire department gets called out there, off of exit 4 and 5, depending upon the situation. Do you guys get called accordingly as well? I mean, do you go out on the interstate for any reason?
We do primarily State Police Troop B for the most part.
Right.
That's their responsibility. So they're the
Okay.
primary law enforcement agency that would respond to a call for service.
Okay.
However, those troopers cover a lot of ground, and
Right.
if one of them is not available, they'll call us and ask for mutual aid, and we get sent out a lot. Sometimes it's nothing more than just to check for something suspicious or something
Right.
dangerous. Sometimes we're the first one on an accident scene,
Right.
and then we have the same responsibilities. Preserve life, protect
Right.
property in the scene, and just secure it until a trooper can show up and do
Yeah.
the investigation.
Yeah. So it's another factor that makes Londonderry a little bit unique or challenging.
Right, the stretch
Yeah.
of highway from exit 3 to exit 6 is
Yeah.
extremely
Yeah.
accident prone. I mean,
Yeah.
all that traffic coming northbound gets bogged down in traffic.
Yeah.
They start to break free around exit 3, and then everybody's,
Yeah. Yeah.
they want to get where they're going. And as soon as they hit exit 4, that's when things start going wrong.
Yeah.
We have a lot of accidents in that stretch of
Yeah,
highway.
exactly. Okay. Let's talk about weather. Obviously, this is the end of January, so we're kind of right in the middle of the throes of winter, but this winter, as opposed to the last 2 winters, we got hit with multiple large storms. I can remember 2 10-inchers back-to-back recently. And I'm pretty sure that whoever's on patrol and during that shift is going to have a pretty active day. So tell me what the impacts of the weather are for a patrol officer.
It depends. I mean, typically if school's canceled or if
Yeah.
people know about the storm beforehand, that's a big impact, and you'll see a drastic decrease in traffic
Okay.
on that those days. But if one were to hit right before the afternoon commute,
Yeah.
depending on
They do.
right, and that's usually how it happens. So not
Yeah.
usually that fortunate, but
Yeah.
and so that they'll have an impact with accidents. Depending on if it's ice, heavy snow, you have branches coming down on power lines, and
Yeah.
and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to assess everything as you go along, whether
Yeah.
how busy PS&H is, if
Right.
they can get out to fix a pole or a wire and
Yeah.
that type of thing. So
Are your vehicles equipped differently such that you're going to be able to get around town in major weather factors to help people? Or I always wondered, you're driving a car just like everyone else,
Well-
and we're sliding off the road.
Well, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, of course, we have snow tires in the vehicles.
Yeah.
And I know my Cruiser is equipped with a special traction control. It's
Okay.
just it's a Ford Crown Vic. It's
Right.
nothing special. It just it's a feature that
Yeah.
you can select it, and the rear tires won't break traction.
Yeah.
But the big thing about the bad weather, slow down.
Yeah.
People need to slow down.
Yeah.
That's a big factor.
Yeah.
And I mean, Garrett and I spend 8 hours a day driving, so we have.
Yeah.
I think we get a lot of practice at it.
Yeah.
So that's probably a big reason why
Yeah.
we can get around a little bit easier.
Yeah. So I guess weather is that's part of living in New England, whether you do police work or not, but you're obviously going to be more busy during those times if it's commute time or rush hour or school is in session, and then you've got the bus situations and all that stuff.
Well, sometimes we have to modify the way we do an investigation. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's in the middle of a snowstorm and we're responding to
Yeah.
multiple car off the roads, and it's
Yeah.
nothing more than a car simply sliding off the road. I mean, first thing you ask, anybody hurt? No.
Yeah.
Any property damage? No. We can call for a wrecker. If it's going to be a hazard, an officer's going to have to stay until they can get the car out of the
Right.
snowbank. But perhaps not. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's so far off the road that it's not going to be a hazard,
Right.
I mean, we're forced to move on.
Yeah.
As opposed to if it was just a single car accident and was the only one in town, we could spend more time, obviously.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. Let's talk about, if you guys, do you have any experience with either friends that you know or other associates in different departments, whether patrolling in Londonderry is different than other towns? I mean, I'm kind of looking to give folks a real good perspective of the uniqueness and the challenges that our police force has in Londonderry, but I'd also like to kind of bump that up against what it might be like in other towns. Any experience you can offer the folks from that regard?
I have a few friends actually that are work for the state police, and
Okay.